Just over 3 short years ago, in March 2019, a white supremacist killed 51 people in a race-based attack in Christchurch. During the initial COVID-19 outbreak, Asian New Zealanders experienced a spike in racial discrimination fueled by xenophobia. The Pacifica community was also singled out in a vicious narrative campaign on social media that vilified and targeted vitriol based on deficit racial stereotypes. Perhaps even more concerning was when this narrative was later fact-checked, it was found to be completely untrue. For Māori and Aotearoa, racism seems like the struggle without end. We cannot opt out of facing racism after an anti-racism koe. It is a visceral, everyday reality we face as Māori and Aotearoa. We, the tangata whenua of this nation, have carried the heaviest burden from te tiriti-based breaches for decades. We, as the Indigenous people of this land, with our koro, kuia, whānau and tamariki, consistently feel the sharp end of racism, of fragile whiteness, systemic racism, conscious and unconscious bias, and the consistent impacts of colonisation of our minds, bodies and souls. Stop Institutional Racism New Zealand co-president, Professor Heather Kane-Fryer said, anti-racism is a verb. This hui is about doing the doing. This morning we will be hearing 2 perspectives on the essentials of a national action plan against racism.
1972, the government signed up to the Committee of the United Nations to eliminate racism in 1972. So note that 1972, 50 years later, the Labour government said, "Wow, I think we better do something about it." And I just want to acknowledge the government putting it into their manifesto. So that actually led the way for the National Action Plan to be designed. And we're at the design stage at the present time. And I just want to acknowledge the Ministry of Justice. They are leading the action plan against racism, and they've asked the Human Rights Commission, and I'm the Race Relations Commissioner, to actually lead the civil society part. Interestingly enough, in what came out of the consultation process and the building process was 3 parts. The first part is constitutional transformation. This came from tangata whenua. And actually, in fact, tangata whenua were quite upfront and said, look, we're not actually quite worried about the everyday person-to-person racism. We are more concerned with the structural racism that is in our governments and in our country at the present time. And so that structural racism is the part where Mātiki Mai and Te Puapua actually comes in. We know that the national iwi chairs have held hundreds of meetings throughout the country and have articulated a process of how in 2040 that the Treaty of Waitangi will be as they signed it back in 1840. And this is an important part of going forward. And I know that 2040 is a long way away. It seems a long, long way. I'm hoping that we will actually have iteration of getting there, because making it in one big step will be a big step. So structural racism has been at the forefront of many government policies, how Māori are treated. And just to put some context to that, we do live in a Māori country. In 1840, Māori governed He rangatiratanga over 100% of Aotearoa's lands. And since the signing of the treaty, gradually it has all been eroded, and plus the culture and the reo and other aspects of Māoridom has been suppressed, and now they only have 3% governance of land that they own. And so that's huge. The other parts are obviously the suppression of the policies and the not encouraging Māori to actually be spoken in schools and their language and all that. And so we have a huge responsibility in getting it right. I know that there has been incremental advances in trying to get it right through the Te Reti of Waitangi Tribunal, and that will continue till the last claim or till the past historical claims have been settled, but there is still contemporary claims to carry on. Hoia no, so that is a key part, transformational constitution in terms of looking like Mātiki Mai. And I just want to acknowledge Margaret Mutu and her team for articulating that over the years, Sid Jackson and many others. Then we come to the practical part of what are the actions that are going to change the culture of the organization to eliminate racism. And we have many comments in terms of, oh, Meng, it's a high goal. You're not going to eliminate racism. But I always say, look, if you have a high goal, even if you get most of the way there, we've done a good job in terms of the structural racism that's actually in businesses and NGOs and in government themselves. And people they sometimes like to call it unconscious bias, but all bias, whether you're conscious or unconscious, it is discrimination of some sort, and racism is part of that discrimination. So we are hoping that through the development and the writing up of that, we'll be able to glean maybe, about 10 recommendations, 10 actions that people will be able to articulate in their organization that will change the culture to help eliminate racism. I want to acknowledge Heather and her team at STIR and also the Auckland University for coming up with their plan and supporting the National Action Plan as well. The third part is reconciliation. How can we, as people that have been abused, where can they actually find a place, safe place to actually have a restorative process and to talk about, to unload, and so that we can actually learn from those experiences and do better with them and stand with them. This is a very important part of human healing, and I'm very supportive of those actions. So just in summary, the very three actions are the Mātiki Mai constitutional transformation back to the Te Reti of Waitangi and how it should be. The second one are the actions, and the third one is restorative process. Now the other part, two parts, which is quite important, is what is the best way to implement this? And my idea, and I know that the ministry will have their idea, but this is my idea at the present time. We all know that all government contracts and local government contracts actually go through GETS, the Government Electronic Tendering Service. I'm hopeful that once the National Action Plan has been designed and once it has been adopted, it will sit with the Government Electronic Tendering Service, where the contractors, whether they are businesses like Fulton Hogan, Downers, Kiwi Build, whoever out there that is wanting to get contracts of the government, they need to adopt the action part of the National Action Plan against racism in their organisation. If you're NGO seeking money from the government, you would need to do the same. If you're a private organization, whether you're a public or private organization, a public listed company like Fletcher's, PGG Wrightson's, or anything like that, you would need to adopt this particular action plan to actually get your money or to get the contract. That is a great incentive in terms of permeating it down to civil society and our communities and our businesses in Aotearoa. And later on, there'll probably be a step 2 that all the subsidiaries, all the plumbers, the carpenters, the carpet layers, the stationery shops that actually supply goods and services to the big contractors, they too will gradually need to actually adopt the action plan to eliminate racism. So I feel that that's a good start. It may be through the evaluation process in the beginning. It may be a voluntary reporting in the beginning in terms of evaluation, monitoring, and impact. And we're suggesting that that could be a beginning. And if the take up is not very good, then we actually need to make it a bit more mandatory, similar to health and safety. Health and safety is a huge part of New Zealand's culture now, and it could only be implemented when the government says, and it has to be direct and deliberate, that you shall do this. I'm excited for the future of our country in terms of the action plan itself. I don't have any further details in terms of the actions themselves, but we do have a task force which is made up of like-minded people, professional people, professors down to people at the coalface. We're probably one of the very few committees that are treaty-based with equal numbers of tangata whenua on there and equal numbers of New Zealanders on there, and we together develop the plan together.
Ka pai kia ora. This one's from Helen Matinga. Ngā mihi, but how do we ensure this doesn't just become a box ticking exercise for contractors?
Yeah, that's a good point there. It's not an easy thing to roll out, right? So it is actually, if it involves a lot of New Zealanders, we have to be smart and probably use a process of, this is one of my ideas. I'm thinking that independently, the Human Rights Commission could hold this, and we have this app that people can download, and it's available to every employee, employer. And what they do is actually they'll have their the place where they work, and once a year or when issues come up, they could actually anonymously send their matter to the Human Rights Commission. And if it seems to be serious, we need to actually contact the bosses of those organizations and say, hey, you've got a problem and this is the problem and you need to fix it. And so that's one way, because what people are also frightened of is that if they report it to the boss, they might not actually get a pay rise, they might not get their holidays when they're due, they might not get the promotion when it's due, they might even get pushed aside and get the sack. And so it's very important that we actually need to keep people safe. And one of the areas of how to keep people safe is having this app and having the AI. It could be that, say, I'll just give an example, that if if Air New Zealand was going to do this, we would say to Air New Zealand boss, look, this app is available to all of your employees. We would love them to actually, once a year, send all the information and send it to us. And what we would do is use the artificial intelligence to decipher all the different comments, put them into different groups, and then we'll send it to the chief executive, and we also send it to the chairperson, because sometimes the chief executives don't actually report to the governors what is happening. So we want to actually make sure that there's accountability and dependability there.
And so today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election.